Yes, boys, what is the story? Welcome back to another episode of the FPL Draft Duo podcast / YouTube. It is myself, Nolezy. Game Week 12 preview is on the way. 9 game weeks from now. 44 days, 9 game weeks, no international break until March. Let's get into it. There's a lot to discuss. Let's start off with our injuries. Jacksy has done up loads of injuries, all to do with international break, when people are coming back and what is the injury. There's a huge amount of people flagged. I think personally, majority of them will be back. So if you have 3 or 4 or 5, even in my case, yellow flags, don't worry too much about it. Let's go through some of the injuries. I'm looking here on my phone. Villa, Onana, foot injury, back the 1st of December. Cash, small injury, expected back soon. Pau Torres, yellow flag assessed. Konza picked up one just before the international break, as far as I'm aware, being assessed. Matson didn't go on international duty, and Ramsey doesn't have a return date. That kind of, for Villa, when you're looking at picking up players, if 2 or 3 of them are out, they will be at risk. Their defence might be slightly compromised. So again, just monitor the Villa defenders and who's in and who's actually out. Brentford, Mbeumo and Wisso, we knew they picked up knocks just before the international break as well. It says being assessed, I'm thinking a week or 2. In the draft, especially a player like Wissa or Mbeumo, I would not be trading because of a week or 2 injury. It's unfortunate if you miss them for a game, lose them for a game, but don't worry too much. Pinnock, knock. Big one that will come into our waivers today is Igor Thiago. He is back training, played an in-house game. I think it was the under-21s or under-19s. He should be back, or at least ready to play some game time when Game Week 12 comes around. Now, it might be Game Week 14 by the time he starts, but think about that top 3 that is possible for Brentford now. Mbeumo, Igor, and Wissa. Now, I don't know how that's going to compromise Wissa's output, but that still can be very, very productive, even if you own Wissa. Brighton, big one. Kadioglu has a capsule tear in his left big toe. All right, so apparently it's going to be a good few weeks. I know he was recommended last week. A lot of people picked him up. Just be very aware that he'll probably be out for a couple of weeks, probably a drop. Baleba is injured. Minte is carrying a knock. Dunk is carrying a knock, so a few at Brighton. Leicester, Vardy is being assessed. Ayew and Daka is back in training, so possible switch there. If Vardy's injured, Daka could come in. Everton, McNeil is expected back soon. Brathwaite has had a reoccurrence of the injury, and they're monitoring it. Might be worth a drop because, again, if that seems to be reoccurring, I wouldn't like to be hanging my hat on him. Sancho has picked up a knock, being assessed. Gusto, no return date. Fofana, currently being assessed. There's not a clear return date. Colwell didn't go on England duty, so we have a lot of players here that, again, I think they're just trying to pull the wool over the international duty eyes. They probably made a deal with some managers that they'll take a week or 2 off. I would not be too worried about a lot of them. Palace, Kamada, suspended, red card. Wharton, another 2 weeks apparently on his groin. Eze, ambitious that he will be back after the international break. I think he is orange flagged at the minute. I know that, especially with hamstring injuries reoccurring, and Eze has had this numerous times, so maybe we can talk about it in the future. Eze comes back, looks like he's fit, might be a good time to trade with Palace's poor run of form, and then also the fact that Eze is likely to get injured again. And then Nketiah, big one, is injured and no return date. So Mateta locked in there. If you have Mateta, worth a hold. And our final few teams, let's look at Liverpool. Jota is expected back the 1st of December. Now, he obviously won't go straight back into the team, so it might be game week 14 before he gets some game time or considerable game time. Alisson being assessed, he should be coming back in the next couple of weeks. Virgil van Dijk sent back to Liverpool after during the international break with a niggle. Trent, possible return for game week 12, but again, we'll look at a possible replacement in Bradley this week. We have to monitor them. In my eyes, people are going to be very, very touch and go for game week 12, and the majority of them that we're talking about will probably be good for game week 13. Man City, a huge amount of flags for Man City, which helps us in some way to try and kind of nail down some players. It's always going to be hard. Doku, Stones, Diaz, Akanji, Ake, Grealish, Foden. So all of them are being assessed. No firm date on them. I think 3 or 4 of them probably could be good. But as Jacksies said, nice one, Pep. We're not going to get solid, concrete evidence on that. United is a very interesting one because United, we have a new system, new manager. I think there's going to be a good few players that are going to be very good FPL assets. When, I don't know, because I can't go and say, yes, Luke Shaw is going to be perfect, because again, it's going to be 3 or 4 weeks before we see a settled team, and even could be longer after that. But Shaw apparently is 2 weeks away to starting. Yoro has been training. Martinez being assessed. Menu actually has been back training since this has come out. So Menu has been seen in light training session. And Lindelof injured on international duty. So there is a good few wing-back options coming back. Luke Shaw probably being the most notable. Malacia was in training, so doesn't necessarily mean that Shaw's going to get straight back in there. I think the best one for me could be Yaro as one of those 3 centre-backs that Amarin likes to play with. Ramsdale broken finger for Southampton. In Spurs, Bentancur got a 7-week ban for a racial slur against Son, which was extremely, extremely strange. Van de Ven, probably be another 2 weeks after the international break. I think it was the hamstring again. And then Romero is 50%. Finally, kudos with that 2-match ban still, because he got, I think it was 2 extra games from the last ban, but still might be an under the radar option. So my overriding opinion on all of these is that the majority of them are going to be okay. Don't worry too much about the yellow flags. But one of the other overriding concepts that we're going to talk about in today's episode is minutes. And as I said at the start of the episode, there's 9 game weeks in 44 days. I think it's every 4.4 days on average, something like that, that there's going to be matches. So what we want to highlight, what we want to focus on is nailed players that are going to play the majority of minutes. And if there's injury doubts, if maybe they are going to be rested because they're not fully fit, that will hugely affect their numbers. And I suppose the one thing that we want to get through over the next 10 game weeks is points per game. If you get a player that has 4 points per game from now to Christmas, that would be an absolutely unbelievable player. Whereas some players could be averaging 2.5 points per game. And that might include a clean sheet and then not starting. So what we want to go for is consistency and points per game. And then the final part of our stats section, all players that are on 4 yellow cards. So again, prior to Christmas, these will probably get banned. With all the games that are coming up, with the ways that you can get yellow cards, more than likely you're going to get or miss 1 game for these players. Kluivert, Semenyo, Senesi, Jackson, Michael Keane, Lukic, Morsi, Ayew, Buenanote, McAllister, Menu, Martinez, Dan Burn, Dibbling, Downs, Harwood Bellis, Van de Ven, Paqueta, Nori, João Gomez, Semedo, and Totti Gomez. So again, trading for players, picking them up off the waiver, just be very conscious of their yellow cards. Okay, straight into our common dilemmas, and this is a really, really common one that has been asked so much this week. These 4 players, whether it's Mitoma, for Neto, Morgan Gibbs-White, Johnson, whichever way it was, Mitoma, Neto, Morgan Gibbs-White, and Johnson have been asked about a huge amount. A lot of the time in 1-for-1 trades, or they might be included in a double trade. So we look at Mitoma, Neto, Morgan Gibbs-White, and Johnson in terms of obviously their goals and assists so far, their expected goal involvements, chances created, their fixtures over the next 6, and their expected points over the next 6. So I suppose what we can do is we can compare their output already. How does that correlate to their XGI? Their chances created might give us a better indication of maybe where they're playing, what they're doing, how close they have been coming to getting points. And then just to know on the fixture aspect, I have it done out of 30. So what I mean by that is if every fixture was 5 out of 5 for the next 30, they'd have 30 out of 30. So essentially the person with the lowest score means that they're playing the easiest team. Let's take Mitoma, for instance, okay? He has 14 out of 30. That means the accumulative FDR rating of the next 6 teams is only coming to 14, indicating that he has some of the best fixtures or the best fixtures out of these 4. Let's start off at the top and we'll go to our goals and assists. Johnson comes out on top with 4 goals, 1 assist, and Morgan Gibbs-White is on bottom with only 1 goal and no assist. Now, he has been injured for periods of time, but Neto hasn't played for a large period and he's 1 goal, 1 assist. In terms of our XG, again, Johnson comes out on top with a 5.5 expected goals. Mitoma not far behind with a 4.3, which is good. And Neto, again, not much game time. He has 1.1. Morgan Gibbs-White with a 2.2. So, again, Johnson comes out on top there. In terms of our chances created, this is where we kind of look into how the player is playing and where they're playing. Morgan Gibbs-White comes out on top with 22 chances created. That's probably because he's been playing a lot deeper. And Forrest also play on the counter attack. So him releasing, let's say, Alanga or Callum Hudson-Odoi, they could be counted as chances created. Johnson, only 9, but that's because he's been on the end of a lot of them chances. So I wouldn't look into chances created too much. It actually just give us a good indication as to where and how Morgan Gibbs-White has been playing. Mitoma, very consistent with 14 chances created. As we discussed, the fixtures, Mitoma on top or bottom, as we might say, 14 out of 30, indicating that over the next 6 fixtures, he has the best. Neto not far off with 15 out of 30, but if you extend that to the next 12 games, Neto would definitely be on top. Chelsea's run over the next while is unbelievable, and we'll kind of sum up the 4 of them at the end after we look at the stats. And then the worst 2 fixtures over the next 6 are Morgan Gibbs-White and Johnson. And again, I'll sum it up at the end, but just to note that 21 out of 30, so play a couple of top teams in there. And then finally, expected points. Johnson, again, comes out on top. I could say by a good bit. He is expected to score 29.9 points. Mitoma, 25.2. Neto, 24.2. And then Morgan Gibbs-White on bottom with 22.5. So, to sum up, Johnson comes out on top in a lot of the important aspects. Goals and assists already, expected goals and assists, and expect points. So it's a safe bet to go with Johnson out of these 4. Now, the fixtures are slightly tough, but Spurs do score a lot of goals. When I look at Spurs later on, they will be a team to target. They have a lot of injuries, especially in defence, but that doesn't affect their attacking sense too much. I still think Johnson's probably going to be one of the best picks nailed down for this team. And if I look at the other 3 compared to nailness, and I think, as we said, that's a very important aspect over the next while. Mitoma, yeah, definitely nailed, but there has been a huge amount of prospects in that Brighton side that if he wanted to be rested, that they could play no problem. Neto, he's one of those that, again, amazing pick, and a lot of questions have come in about him. I would love to pick up Neto. I'm just saying that I'd probably go with maybe Mitoma or Johnson over him. It might be 50-50 for Mitoma. Neto is a brilliant pick, but he will be rested over the next while. Very high pick, and I think he should be starting. I have him, and I'm really happy to own him. But I think if you want to go for nailness, Mitoma is slightly ahead of him, and Johnson maybe slightly more. Morgan Gibbs-White, again, nailed, but we're looking at his aspects. He's only 1 goal so far. He's playing deeper. His expected points aren't great, and his fixtures aren't great. So if we had to rank them, Johnson kind of, in terms of stats and in terms of output, number 1. I think if you're looking for just a solid pick, and if you look at Mitoma's overall scores, he only comes out on top in fixtures, but he's very, very close to the top in every other category. 1 goal, 3 assists, second in that. Expected goal involvements, 4.3, second in that. Chances created, second in that. And points per game, second in that. And has the best fixtures. So extremely, extremely solid pick as always. Probably have to go with him. Neto, also a great pick. Morgan Gibbs-White, slightly going down on the list, but any 4 of these are going to be solid picks over the Christmas period. And if I had to pick one, it would be our boy Johnson. Let's go into some dilemmas, some trades that have been sent in. As always, thank you so much. There's been a huge amount of trades sent in. We just cannot get to them all. We'll try to get to them on Instagram. Let's start off. I'm going to do a bit more of a quick fire on these ones because they might only apply to a couple of people. Simicast versus Robertson. I know that Simicast has got his chance over the next while or last while, but I do still think if I was picking one, I'd go for Robertson. I just think that even in terms of trade value, he always going to be higher and has had some decent games recently. Now, on that note, there has been talks about Kirk as being a possible target for Liverpool, so maybe both of them are at risk. But if I had to really pick one, I'd still go for Robertson, just a safe bet. Madison or Trossard, I think for me, that's an easy one. I'd go for Madison. A lot of players coming back fit for Arsenal. And yeah, Matters really, really good output. I know he didn't start a couple of games ago, but I still would rather a solid Madison in my team on set pieces. And although Trossard has a high ceiling, he's very prone to rotation. And Martinelli playing very good recently. In our double trade, I think this one for me is fairly simple. Rashford and Evan Nielsen for Rodgers and Wissa. And I'd still go with our boys that have been doing very good, Rodgers and Wissa. Now, there is some asterisks over Rodgers and Wissa. Wissa with a slight injury and could be pushed to the left. And Rodgers with a very, very hefty schedule over the Christmas period. I still think they're really solid picks over Evan Nielsen. Good pick, but Rashford, big question marks. Where does he fit in? He could be a brilliant pick, but for me, I just don't see it yet. So I'm going to go with the solid Rodgers and Wissa. Iwobi and Barnes, two players, again, that were asked an awful lot about. Iwobi, solid pick. I think he started every game but one this season for Fulham, and they're a really decent side. Whereas Barnes has been rotated, but he only needs a short space of time to produce. We saw it the last day, and he could be coming into that starting 11 of Barnes, Isaac, and Gordon. It's their best top three. But Joe Linton banged the last day, man of the match performance. Therefore, it's not as simple as just throw him on the left because Joe Linton has been playing very well there. So for purposes of solidifying my team, I would go Iwobi, but Barnes as a little punt is not a bad shout. And then finally, a 3-for-3 trade, Watkins, Kluivert and Aït-Nouri for Vardy, Gordon and Saliba. And I would go for, and I thought I had this done in my head, I think I'd go for... Geez, I think I'm changing my mind now. I was initially going to say Watkins, Kluivert and Aït-Nouri, but talking through what I'm thinking right now, Watkins, okay, yes, he hasn't been having the greatest of seasons, but will improve, definitely. Kluivert, good fixtures, but will get rotated. Aït-Nouri, great fixtures, has been doing amazing, but his run is coming to an end. So I think the Vardy, who has been doing well, the Gordon, who will definitely come into it, and Saliba, who's a solid pick. I think I'd actually go for the three solid players of Vardy, Gordon, and Saliba. I'd want them for the whole season, whereas Watkins, Kluivert, and Aït-Nouri, they have some really good fixtures that they're coming into, or more importantly, coming out of. That in a couple of weeks' time, you look back at that trade and say, Jesus, I'm delighted I have Gordon, Saliba, and Vardy. So I'm going to go for the three solid picks. As always, as I said, thank you for sending them in. Apologies if we don't get to them, and hopefully we're right. Some quick fire listener questions now, and the first two questions are about United players, and I can't really give solid answers because I have no idea who he's going to prefer. I've discussed it with many people about who'd play in them roles for Amarin. First question is Morgan Gibbs-White or Ahmed, and if Ahmed was one of those players, I would definitely go with him. But I've heard of Anthony as a wing back. I've heard of Bruno as the number 10. Too many variations for me to take a punt, especially over Morgan Gibbs-White, who we know is nailed. And then the next question is Garnacho at risk with Amarin? 3-4-3 doesn't suit him. And yeah, just as I said with Ahmed, does 3-4-3 suit Ahmed? Yes, he works hard, but is he good defensively? So I can't really give an answer on the United boys. If it was me, I would probably stick with the kind of known entities until we see more. When we see our first couple of teams, we might get a little bit of a feel for it. Until then, play it safe. Should I get rid of Morgan Gibbs-White and Tavernier for Neto and Savio? I would probably get rid of Neto for Tavernier. So Morgan Gibbs-White and Neto would be my solid two picks. Gordon for Jota. I would probably take Gordon for Jota currently, because Jota again will be a couple of more weeks in and out of that team. I know he's devastating. I know he is, but Gordon is coming into that form. Will be absolutely nailed down. I think he'd be just a bit more settled and a bit more confident with Gordon in your team rather than Jota. Stick with Madueke, or do I get someone like Pedro Neto, Joelinton, or Barnes? Now, Madueke could be more nailed than Neto, but Neto and Madueke love to play on the right. Um, I think Joelinton is a very solid pick. I would have Joelinton over Barnes, and I still think I might have Madueke over Neto because Madueke has been preferred, and I know that Neto can play on the left, whereas Madueke can only play on the right. So maybe that actually might help Neto, that he could play left or right. I think if you had Madueke, maybe stay. If you don't, I'd go to Neto. Ahmed and Yoro, good picks on the waiver. As I mentioned before, it's hard to tell with Ahmed, but Yoro, maybe next week, could be good. I think this week might be slightly early. Morgan Gibbs White, Neto, or Wobie. In that case, I would go Neto. Should I drop Reece James or Rico Lewis for Lewis Hall? I don't think I would. Yeah, Lewis Hall is playing really well. Newcastle have some okay fixtures, but Reece James, unbelievable run of fixtures. I know he got the benching. I wouldn't worry too much about it. And Rico Lewis, I know he got the benching with Kyle Walker. Again, too good of an asset to just drop off the waiver for Rico Lewis. If you want to change, maybe put them in a trade and then waiver in Lewis Hall for your waiver defender. It might be a good way to upgrade your midfield. Is Reece Nelson worth a punt? Yeah, maybe, but for a punt, I think I'd know they're definitely going to start and it's a good fixture. For a punt for someone that I don't know is going to definitely start, that has just had a couple of games, I don't think so. I think there's better punts, and we might talk about some later on. And then is Havertz a hold? Definitely. I think he's the only forward to play 90 minutes in every game. If you're looking at someone like that, it's so hard to overlook that because that is something that we absolutely strive for. And although he's going through a slightly quieter patch, having a top forward that always plays for a top team is just, that's your bread and butter. That's what you want to strive for. Onto our defender waiver section of the podcast. Now, we're looking at 3 players that could be good over the Christmas period. Definitely solid picks for good teams and decent fixtures. First up is Kirkes, and his next 5 fixtures are Brighton at home, Wolves away, Spurs at home, Ipswich away, and West Ham at home. All decent enough fixtures, and Bournemouth have been very, very solid this year. So you could be targeting maybe 2, possibly 3 clean sheets there. If you got 2, that'd be good. His expected in goal involvements is 1, with 0 goals, 0 assists, but 2 clean sheets. Now, as I said earlier on, Kirkes could be targeted by Liverpool. So their run of fixtures actually is very decent all the way up to Christmas. Then at Christmas, you never know, you could be owning a Liverpool player. United could go in for him. He could actually be playing for a top team by Christmas. So it's kind of a no-brainer investment that if you have a space there, decent fixtures, he's a good player, Bournemouth are playing decent, and there's a possibility of him upgrading. Next on the list is a player who started and played 90 minutes in the last 3, Estupinan. And I think with Kadioglu's injury and kind of unknown whether it's going to be relatively soon or a couple of weeks, I think his position is slightly nailed for the next while. We know what he can do. He only has had 1 expected goal involvement so far this year. And yeah, he has missed a lot of football, but he does look like he's going to be back in that side. The next 5 fixtures are favourable. Bournemouth away, Southampton at home, Fulham away, Leicester away, and Palace at home. At the start of the season, you think that's a dream run. Now we realise that Bournemouth are a good side, Fulham are a good side. But I expect a lot of these teams that are overperforming, the Forest, the Bournemouth, the Fulham, to actually slightly dip in form over the Christmas period because they're going to have to rotate their side a good bit. And what we've seen from them teams is fairly solid base. And if we see that, we might see a dip in their performances. So we, or I especially, expect some returns for Estupinan over the next maybe 5-6 game weeks. So yeah, good one to pick up. Always has a high ceiling, and if he comes into a bit of form, people always want him. Top of the list is Timber, and that's because he's probably going to be nailed for the next while. Calafiori is also a good replacement. He is maybe a couple of weeks away. But Timber is nearly going to have to start. We have Saliba, we've Gabriel, and we've Timber. Zinchenko might never play for Arsenal again after divulging Arteta's secrets in his book. Kivor, Zinchenko, they've all had very, very sporadic minutes this year and don't look like they're going to be preferred. Over the next game week or two, one of them is going to have to play, but Timber is probably going to be nailed down. The next fixtures, Arsenal have not been good defensively, but they have Forest at home, West Ham away, United at home, Fulham away, and Everton at home. They're going to keep some clean sheets there. He only has 0.7 expected goal involvements, but he has been getting into some inverted positions and some slightly advanced positions. He's had 1 assist, 2 clean sheets. Nothing amazing from Timber so far this year, but I think with him being nailed, with the fixtures slightly improving, he is going to be a valuable player. And if you've got a nail defender, Ben White injured for the next couple of weeks, if you've got a nail defender like that for Arsenal, it's hard to overlook. So I'd maybe even be looking toward him in a trade. And if he's taken, Calafiori's on an orange flag, I think he could be one to get under the radar also. Now we're looking at some solid midfielders here that could be very important over the Christmas period, although they're very vanilla and they're not exciting, but they will get you the 2-3 points that might win you a game week. If you go for the high upside pick that's going to be rotated, they might average lower points per game than these crew over the Christmas period. We're starting off with Lewis Cook, and he's actually had a very productive, compared to what he should do and what he did last year, productive season with 1 goal and 3 assists. He has played every minute apart from 7 this year. So although he's a holding midfielder, he has had 3 yellow cards. He's never going to excite you, but his points per game is actually okay. It's not horrendous for what you thought Lewis Cook was going to be. He'll probably play every game or start every game, maybe one. He might get rested for one over the Christmas period. And again, if we're looking at points per game, you know, he's going to average maybe 3 points per game, 2.5. It's not the absolute worst. It's better than someone who will get you 3 or 4 points on one day and then get 2 zeros. Okay. Next up is Caicedo, and again, one of the players of the season. 1 goal, 2 assists. Nothing spectacular, but there's some attacking players out there. We talked about Morgan Gibbs-White, who has 1 goal, 0 assists this season. So to have 3 or 4 returns after 12 games is not the absolute worst, especially for a defending midfielder. He's nearly played every minute, 975 out of 990 possible minutes. 1.5 expected goals, but Chelsea's run is just so good. The next 7 are good. Leicester, Villa, Southampton, Spurs, Brentford, Everton, Fulham. All decent sides to play, apart from Villa, we might say. But their run after that is also insane. So if you're looking for someone to just plug a gap, you don't have to worry about them. You're not expecting a return. If they get one, fair enough. You're looking for 3 points with a clean sheet. You never know, an assist or some bonus could be in there. And then we're looking for slightly higher upside, but still fairly vanilla in Kovacic. We talked at the start about the amount of players that are out for Man City, as well as the positioning. Kovacic will probably plug in there as a Rodri replacement for the next while. 878 minutes, which is not amazing compared to the other two, but it is very good for a Man City player. He has started every one but 2 games, I think, or maybe got taken off in 2 games, and had 2.2 expected goals. He can also score stunners. Man City will be in possession for most of the game. Therefore, he'll have them opportunities from outside the box, as we always talk about. Their fixtures are not amazing. So maybe the 2 points and then looking for an assist or a goal might be the way forward. If I was picking out of these 3, probably pick Caicedo, because Chelsea have a really good run of fixture. He's playing really, really well, and he's undroppable at the minute, unless there's some sort of injury or the need to be rotated. So 3 very, very solid but basic picks over the next while. On to slightly more punchy picks now for midfielders, and we're starting off with Sammy Smodics. I apologise to the dude that I told to get rid of Sammy Smodics, but in fairness, I did think I said to put in Joe Linton instead. Sammy Smodics banged the last game. Now he's 3 goals this year, 2.6 expected goal involvements, and I think the most surprising thing is that Ipswich are scoring goals. So I wrote off Smodics after he didn't perform for a couple of game weeks, but Ipswich are really going for these games, especially at home. Not a bad pick with some decent fixtures coming up. Yes, they have some tough ones in their United next game week, but they do have some fixtures that, if you're in a big size league, it's worth a shot. It's worth a shot that he could come up with the goods. He looks like he's going to be preferred in that Ipswich team, whereas previous parts of the year he was in and out. Whereas he looks like one of those nailed players or more nailed players in that Ipswich side. Again, more solid. We talked about him last week. Talked about these two players last week, but Joe Linton and Kudos. Joe Linton banged the last day. What a goal. Man of the match. And they have some very good fixtures coming up. I think he's nailed down. So getting a Newcastle player in like Joe Linton, who can score goals as we saw, good decision. 2.3 expected goals with 2 goals so far. I expect him to a lot better things, but also when you look at the factors that we're looking for, someone who's nailed down with okay fixtures and as I said, going to play a majority of minutes for the Christmas period, Joe Linton kind of fits that bill. Not going to be too risky, but could get a return. Top of the list as a punt is Kudos, because yes, he does miss the next 2 games, right? But if people are sick of him and throw him off after the next 2 games, who he's suspended for, or what he's suspended for, is Newcastle and Arsenal. He's suspended for those two. So yeah, okay, you miss a Newcastle game, but Arsenal game would have been a very tough one. If you had a really good team, you could actually bench him. After that, he's some serious fixtures. Leicester away, Wolves at home, Bournemouth away, Brighton at home, and then Southampton away. So 4 fixtures, possibly 5, that you could be looking to Kudos to get you some points. That you'd be looking, saying, okay, that's a good fixture. And the fact that he's actually suspended for 2 more games, and someone says, oh my God, sure, that feels like ages away. We're coming into the Christmas period. They'll want him. They'll need him back. West Ham need as many players as possible. So I think Kudos as an under the radar pick, because, again, he's suspended. Last week I would have said, no, it's too long. But as that suspension closes in, you're thinking, okay, what fixtures do I have after it? And for Kudos, they're as good as you can get for an attacker. Finishing off on our forwards and some players that we're looking at this week. First up is Adam Armstrong. Got the start last week as predicted, but his fixtures are so bad. Liverpool, Brighton, Chelsea, Villa, Spurs. If you're picking them up, you're picking them up just to get them 2 points. If you get a return, great. So yeah, if you're looking to replace a non-playing striker, good, but it's inevitable that at some point in the future you're probably wanting to trade him out or waiver him out for another player. But if there's a starting striker that you have not filled a spot for, he's a good way to plug that. I'd be looking kind of a bit more towards the upside in Igor Thiago. Talked about him previously in the podcast. Really big, strong striker. Brentford signed him and immediately got injured. Has not played in the Premier League so far, so we have no stats, but has been productive at previous clubs. Not played at the highest level, okay, some decent sides, but can finish. He is a finisher. And I think maybe in Mbeumo one side and Wissa the other side, he'll definitely be a good striker. He'll be like your Evan Nielsen that has come into the Premier League, that is very good for the draft, that will get some goals, that he's never going to set the world alight, but a really, really good striker if he gets consistent game time. Probably not going to feature game week 12, maybe game week 13, a cameo. You never know, game week 14, a start. Definitely someone I'd be eyeing up for the future. Top of the list, our boy, we talked about him last week, João Pedro, 1 goal, 1 assist against City. I think it was an 11-point return. Now up to 3 goals and 1 assist, and 5 very favourable fixtures. Bournemouth away, Southampton at home, Fulham away, Leicester away, and Palace at home. I still don't think he's guaranteed a nailed down starting position, but he will play a nice chunk of minutes. And even if he doesn't, we saw what he could do when he comes on with a short space of time. If he's still on the waiver, if there's a possible trade, he's the man for the next while, and possibly on penalties as well. I would not go trading a perfectly good starting striker like a Watkins, or, I was going to say Evan Nielsen, but I probably would. A really solid striker like a Wissa, I would be keeping them. João Pedro will be good, but there is still slight question marks over guaranteed playing time. Really, really high upside and a fantastic pick, but just be slightly careful what you might give away from him. Give away for him. He's really, really valuable right now. And if you're trading away, people will look for a lot in return. So just be very careful. Game week 12 preview done. We are going to be seeing a lot of each other over the next while with all these game weeks. As always, Instagram, Twitter, any social media, get them questions in. Hopefully we can help you get the W. FPL Draft Joe out. Boom.